to have your dinner, now your imagination,
But, Monsieur Duval, at first I could not believe my own eyes. A lot of horrible, twisted things, groaning, whining, laughing.
Dis donc, Jean, what were you drinking last night?
Nothing, Monsieur, I assure you.
As a child, the sideshows were my favorite part of the carnival. I found myself fascinated by the oddities, both animal and human alike. However, I'm no longer a child and maybe just a little wiser. Therefore, where I once saw oddities, I now see people. People with likes and dislikes. People with hopes and dreams. People with loves and people with fears. Some with incredible stories of success, yet others with devastating stories of pain and hardship. It was during the late 19th and early 20th century that the sideshow was at its height of popularity. Promoters such as the legendary P.T. Barnum quickly realized the appeal of oddities of all shapes and sizes, and therefore toured the world in search of many unusual things, including animals and people with unique abilities and deformities. Harper earned herself the name, the Camel Girl, due to a rare disorder known as genu recurvatum. As a result, she was able to bend her knees backwards, like that of a camel. Hence the stage name, Camel Girl. At the age of 16 she joined the W.H. Harris Nickel Plate Circus, where she quickly rose to fame as one of his star attraction. Although, in later years her name faded from public memory as Harris's Nickel Plate Circus became synonymous with the incidents surrounding another one of his other star attraction, the infamous Gypsy the Elephant. Little is written about her act, however she was described as the most wonderful freak of nature since the beginning of the world. But, what we do know is that she would often appear on stage with a real camel, where she would walk on all fours while talking to the audience.
I am called the Camel Girl because my knees turn backward. I can walk best on my hands and feet as you see me in the picture. I have traveled considerably in the show business for the past 4 years and now, this is 1886, and I intend to quit the show business and go to school and fit myself for another occupation.
Although very lucrative, her career was quite short, lasting little over 4 years. Yet earning her a staggering $860 per month, which today would be in excess of $5,000 per week. This made her one of the highest paid stars of her era. By the age of 30, Ella had retired from her showbiz career and returned home to Tennessee. And by 1905 had married Robert Saverly, a local school teacher. To this day, people question her decision to leave show business. She obviously wowed audiences, yet chose to walk away from the fame and the fortune in order to settle down into what many would consider a normal life. Though, we'll never know because there is so little written about her life. Sadly, she developed colon cancer in her late 40s and passed away in the December of 1921, leaving behind a short, but enigmatic career. Sprague lived a significant part of his childhood as a normal, healthy boy. However, by his early teens he began losing an alarming amount of weight, even though he was eating more than twice the average size meal. By 1865 and weighing in at less than 40 pounds, he struggled to find even the most basic employment. Many considered him too frail to work in the textile and arms industries. However, this led him to develop his first sideshow act, the original Thin Man. Then, just a year later in 1866, he was picked up by P.T. Barnum for his newly reopened New York-based American Museum, where he would appear alongside other great names of the day such as General Tom Thumb, Chang and Eng and Zip the Pinhead. Unfortunately in 1868, the museum was burnt to the ground in a devastating fire. And Sprague once again found himself seeking work in the various small East Coast carnival sideshows. He struggled for a number of years, but did marry his long-term sweetheart Minnie Thompson. The couple went on to produce 3 healthy boys, but sadly, Isaac himself was not so fortunate. His short stint with P.T. Barnum would prove to be the height of his career, and by his mid-40s found himself living in poverty. Although he'd never been a healthy man, poverty simply added to his condition, and at the age of 44, and measuring a mere 5 foot 6 inches, he only weighed in at an astounding 43 pounds. Yet, for some, those lucky few that were able to make it in the world of the sideshow, it became more than just a means of earning a living. It was a home, and, maybe more importantly, a family. Sadly, he was to succumb to a combination of poor health and poverty, passing away of asphyxia at the age of 46. Sprague is a good example of what life had in store for most people born with disfigurements in the 19th century. Often shunned by people and unable to find employment, they were forced into the outermost fringes of society, where poverty was the norm and an early death was almost a certainty. Prince Randian suffered with yet another incredibly rare condition, tetraamelia, which is characterized by the lack of all 4 limbs. Little is known about his childhood, or even his real name. However, some have suggested that he was probably brought to the US by P.T. Barnum around 1889, where he quickly gained popularity in various circus and carnival sideshows. Considered a very intelligent man, speaking several languages, he quickly developed the ability to both paint and write using his mouth. However, he was best known at that time for his act in which he wore a one-piece woolen suit, and would move himself around the stage by wiggling his hips and shoulders, thus resembling a caterpillar or snake. In another part of his act, Randian would often light and smoke a cigarette, something which he would later perform in the 1932 movie, Freaks, where he played himself, the living torso.
We've got personality. We know how to sell the stuff. Same way in the last town. Never heard such applause in your life. Let me tell you something that everybody around here don't know. We're only killing time with this circus. We've got bigger time to follow, and we can do it too.
Eventually, he moved to New Jersey, where he would spend the remainder of his life. Then marry and go on to produce 4 healthy children. 3 girls and a boy. Prince Randian was one of the sideshow greats with a career spanning more than 45 years. He continued working until the end, finally passing away in 1934, shortly after giving his last performance at the Sam Wagner's 14th Street Museum. Frank Lentini made quite a name for himself throughout Europe in the early part of his life. Performing as the Great Lentini, he would eventually make his way to the US and become a regular Ringling Brothers act, where he would adopt the name, the Three-Legged Man. His stage name came from his deformity, an extra leg which was the result of a partially absorbed conjoined twin. Lentini was one of many performers famous in the late 19th and early 20th century for their additional appendages. His third leg was joined to a partially formed pelvic bone, which connected to the base of his spine. This he would use in his first ever act, in which he would kick a ball across the stage. Although as a child many pitied him, and some were even repulsed by his deformities, Lentini never allowed this to taint his personality or his act, with fellow performers simply referring to him as the King. His career as a performer went on to span more than 40 years, working with such greats as Barnum and Bailey and Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. Finally, he passed away in 1966 at the age of 77, leaving behind one of the greatest careers in sideshow history.
The
Hip and fifth opinionated people. A sample of the marvelous freaks you'll see for the price of a small thin dime. You get the whole show now if you hurry, hurry, hurry!
Jenny Lee and Elvira Snow were two young women who suffered from the same rare condition, microcephaly, which results in an abnormally small cranium, small brain and a sloped forehead. Although often billed as twins from the Yucatan, they were in fact born several years apart in Georgia. Elvira in 1901, but there are no actual records confirming Jenny's birth date, though most researchers agree it was probably around 1913. Their career really began when their parents loaned them to a local freak show. However, rather than becoming a spectacle for ridicule, the girls actually were to find their way into the hearts of audiences far and wide, due to their childlike innocence. They would later make an appearance alongside Schlitzie, the Last of the Aztecs, and other renowned sideshow artists of the time such as Prince Randian, the Living Torso, in the controversial 1932 movie, Freaks, where they would portray Pip and Zip, two unforgettably charming young girls.
Why, Schlitzie, what's the matter?
Oh, I'm sorry, Schlitzie.
At their height of popularity, they were earning somewhere in the region of $325 per month, which is quite remarkable when we consider that this was more than a school teacher's average yearly income at that time. Although sadly Jenny never really benefited from her earnings, as she passed away in her early 20s. However, Elvira went on to live a long and happy life, finally dying in 1971. Watching Freaks today, it is easy to understand why in a world full of war and depression, audiences were so charmed by these young women, because even now in the 21st century, they can still make us smile. Today in our politically correct world, we may look upon the sideshow as nothing more than an exploitative means of generating wealth off the misfortune of the few, while pandering to the lowest side of humanity. And in many respects that is true. However, the freak and carnival sideshow offered something far greater. They offered a select few the opportunity to live a life, far beyond what their disabilities and deformities would have otherwise allowed. They offered employment and income at a time when there was no support for anyone with a disability. But more than that, they offered a community, friendship and family to a group of people who were otherwise shunned and ridiculed by society.